Today we are starting a new series on boundaries. I think boundaries are an important topic to discuss, and in this series we will look at what a boundary is, what kinds of boundaries there are, and examples of healthy boundaries that are given in the Bible. So I'm going to give a few definitions just from the dictionary. Define boundary: a line that marks the limit of an area or a dividing line. We see this in sports: foul ball, out of play, off the court, out of bounds. We see this in countries, North and South Korea, one that comes to my mind first. Boundaries of dividing states, counties, Mason-Dixon line. There's lots of boundaries in that aspect. A boundary is also a limit that you put on a subject or a sphere of activity. I think again of sports. Depending on what sports you're playing, there's different rules. There are moral boundaries, political boundaries, and in this day and age, I think it's really tough, painful, sad that boundaries have been moved up so much, and that the point of contention or controversy or discussion is way up here, as opposed to let's start the discussion back here. If we start the discussion here, we don't have to go to these horrible and sad decisions. Anyway, and also I think it's sad because it can be very confusing for young people, like what is real, what's not real, what's true, what's not true, what foundation do I use, what do I build on, how do I ground myself when these moral boundaries are pushed way too far. And I think the confusion comes is because we all have a moral light. We all have something inside of us that God has given us. And this is in Romans 1, 19 and 20. I'm going to read it for you. It says, and it's talking about generally people who have rejected God. And it says, since what is known about God is made plain to them, because God has made it plain. And then you could ask, well, how? Verse 20, since the beginning of time, since the creation of the world, God's invisible qualities, his eternal power, and his divine nature have been clearly seen and understood from what has been made, so that people are without an excuse. So God has given us this internal understanding or switch. And what Romans 1 is talking about is people who have shut that out or turned that switch off or have just pushed that away, and God gives them over. So boundaries are a part of who we are. It's a part of learning who we are. It's a part of our internal decision-making processes of what we will and what we will not allow in our life. It's all boundaries. We use boundaries all the time. This includes physical boundaries, mental, emotional, verbal, material boundary. That's my stuff. You can't touch my stuff. I think a big boundary is physical, and in so many different aspects. First, like personal space. I think in America, our personal space is about 3 feet. That changes with different cultures and really different groups. If it's a family, it might be closer, but my high school Spanish teacher was from a Latin country, and personal space was way smaller than 3 feet. So I think, students kind of leaned back. I just think of that. I think people in playtime, small kids, even middle schoolers, like a lot of their play is very physical, a lot of physicality. And I think there needs to be conversations on if somebody is uncomfortable with that kind of play or physicality, pushing, shoving, piggyback rides, all of that stuff. If we're uncomfortable about that, I think it's important to learn how to have those boundaries and say, like, I don't want to give you a piggyback ride, or I don't, don't push me, don't pull me, don't hit me. I see it a lot, and basically how I handle it, especially if I think someone is uncomfortable, is like, keep your hands to yourselves. Like, whatever play you're having, whatever you're talking about, you can do it with your hands to yourself. Anyway, and then let's talk. Well, I'm just giving a broad scope. Verbal, mental, emotional boundaries. I like to say, hang around your fans. Hang around those people who love you, support you, encourage you in what you're doing, and who don't put you down. And that's just a way of saying, have a good boundary. Hang around those people that you want to be like. Hang around those people that are going to encourage you to be the best that you can be. Hang around those people who support you. And that's just a very simple way of creating a healthy boundary. Like, if you hang around people that make you feel bad, you are allowing that. You are not setting that boundary. Those people are obviously crossing boundaries emotionally, mentally. It happens all the time. In the Bible, Jesus had healthy boundaries. It's interesting to think, what, Jesus had boundaries? Yeah, Jesus had boundaries. He respected people. And he confronted those who did not respect boundaries. And we are going to look into some of those examples in this series.